snowing. So.
I know. I can't wait to go home. You know, when it's snowing, you just want to be at home. You're like, why am I working? I love being here. I'm kidding. Hey, this is Sue Lee. Today I'm going to show you how to make a caramelized onion galette. It's actually inspired by my friend Nicole Rucker, who is a baker, and we were just texting with each other, like dreaming about our cravings and foods we want to eat. We love French onion soup, and we love onions, and we love pie dough. Let's just do it all together. And I was like, it's kind of a basic recipe, but then we were like, whatever, basic is good. We just need comfort and basicness in our lives right now. That's where this recipe came from.
So this recipe is very popular.
I know. I'm always surprised when people cook my recipes. I don't have that name recognition out in the world, so I love that the recipe components and the flavors of a recipe really drives people to make it, because that speaks a lot for the food itself versus who I am, and that makes me really happy. Okay, so here we're gonna make the dough. I think sometimes people are afraid of making pie dough because they think like the length of time makes it feel like it's a hard thing to do. But it's completely inactive time, meaning you're gonna make the dough, it's gonna take less than 5 minutes, and then when you're done, all you do is wrap it up in plastic wrap and let it rest in the refrigerator or in the freezer. The next component of the recipe is the butter. You want it to make sure that it's really cold. The Gruyère is channeling French onion soup, and it's also a very delicious, kind of stinky cheese. It's such a classic component in the soup itself. We're gonna pinch the dough and the flour together. You just sort of make flakes with it. It can feel really dry right now, but don't worry about it, because if you make your dough too wet, it won't be a flaky crust. It'll be a little stodgy. I'm going to show you a way to knead it all together so that it'll start to look like a cohesive block. It's something my friend Claire Saffitz taught me. Claire's so smart. So you're gonna take your dough and you're gonna put it in the plastic wrap. I just pick up the plastic wrap corners and I bring it together like this. It still looks dry, but seriously, don't be afraid. Then you bring it together. I'm gonna flip it. And with your rolling pin, you just knead it together. I feel like doing this sort of contains the mess and gets as much of the dough in the plastic wrap as possible. And it's just so smart. And here we are, here's the dough. It's done. For the second component of the recipe, we're going to caramelize the onions. We're using sweet onions because it balances out the funkiness of the cheese and the pepper. Okay, here we go, it's all your onions. It'll seem like a lot of butter, but it's not. Don't be afraid of fat, and don't be afraid of salt. Salt and fat, they're not all that bad for you. Just don't eat a lot of it, you know? So here we're gonna add the onions. I'm just gonna go ahead and season it with salt. This is so that you can draw out the moisture and start to evaporate the moisture, and it'll start to cook and caramelize. So just leave it. Don't be like me. Don't touch it. Just leave it and walk away for a little bit. It's okay. I really wanna touch it. In the beginning of caramelizing your onions, you don't want to disturb it too much. You want the bottom to create that golden brown rings around the onions. And then as it gets darker and softer, you then want to stir it every 2 or 3 minutes, just to be safe so that it's not burning. Okay, I need to listen to my own advice and stop touching it. I keep like wanting to touch it because I'm nervous. You know what I do? I actually, when I'm cooking, I like to look at Trulia or Zillow, and I like to look at stock prices. Like, I'm not an investor, I just like to look at it. Oh, I won't, I'll put my phone away. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. So now what do you want to talk about? It's burned a little. Don't worry, we have a solution for the burning. I have a little stock here, which I'll use, or you can use water. And then you scrape it, and just adding a little moisture prevents things from scorching. So this has been about 20 minutes into the cooking process, and you can see that there's a nice ring a fond all around the pan, and the onions itself are breaking down and turning brown, but we're getting really close to adding the sherry. So it's been about 25 minutes. Add the stock and the sherry, and it's important to use a dry sherry. I love sherry because I love Fraser crane. Do you remember like Fraser and Niles always have sherry? If I had a long day and not a very good day, I put it on. It's like, it's so soothing for me. Okay, I think it's looking really nice. Transfer this onto a sheet tray to let it cool. Once it cools, it'll solidify. Because you're already chilling your dough for about 4 hours, there's plenty of time for it to cool down. Now we have our cooled onions, and the dough has rested for 4 hours. When I take it out, it's a cohesive piece of dough, and there are no dry spots. I think it's important to know to roll from the middle out. Don't ever roll your dough like this. Like, it'll be uneven if you go from here to here. To create an even layer, you want to go from the middle and roll out and just keep turning your dough. It's important to work smart. One thing I love about galettes is that you aren't really confined to any specific shape or form. I think it's important to know that food that you eat and you cook for yourself doesn't need to be super perfect. It just needs to taste good for you and also make you happy when you're making it. It sounds really cheesy, but honestly, it's very true, okay? Just trust me. So now we're gonna spread our caramelized onion onto the tart. So we're gonna leave a border that's about 1 to 2 inches all around. Slip this right on there. So this is the fun part. This is when you get to make your most beautiful galette. You're just gonna fold the dough onto itself, like so. We're just gonna bake it and then add more cheese. So it's been 40 minutes and, oh, it's looking so good. We're gonna pretend that this is the actual soup and create that like melted Gruyere cheese crust. Season with more pepper. Just 5 more minutes to melt the cheese and then we're ready to eat it. Ooh. Oh my God, this looks good. And you see the bubbling? That means it's cooked all the way through. Now we're going to let the tart cool for a few minutes. You want everything to settle in its place. You want to make sure like it doesn't fall apart when you cut it. So a lot of cheese melted around the tart itself, and it's not in the recipe, but I just added a little extra cheese because I like the crunchy bit of the cheese that goes on the tart. I think it tastes really good. I'm excited. I can't wait to take a bite. The onions are so soft and velvety. It's so good, and the crust, it's so flaky. It's two very classic foundations of cooking, really. You have caramelized onions and you have pie dough. All I did was simply combine it together and make something that is savory and comforting and so delicious. It's so good. Now I know why the internet likes it.